Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most eventful and game-changing parts of the Harry Potter saga, the Goblet of Fire. This is the installment where the stakes skyrocket, the Triwizard Tournament brings new thrills and dangers, and the ending changes the course of the entire story. Voldemort returns. However, even over 2 hours of screen time weren't enough to capture the full depth of the book. Some storylines were cut entirely, others were altered. Today, we'll revisit important scenes, characters, and details that didn't make it into the movie, and explore why that matters. Enjoy watching. Number 1. Dobby and Winky. House elves played a meaningful role in the book. Winky, the servant of Barty Crouch Sr., turned out to be a key piece in uncovering the mystery of Barty Crouch Jr. After being dismissed, she ended up in the Hogwarts kitchens where she was looked after by Dobby, the elf we all loved from his first appearance. In the film, Winky doesn't appear at all, and Dobby's role is completely cut. This not only impoverishes the magical world, but also severs important emotional and narrative threads. Number 2. The Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. Winky's story led Hermione to launch a campaign for elf rights. She even came up with an official name, SPEW, the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. It was still shorter than her original idea, which included words like outrageous, friendship, and cruelty. But despite her enthusiasm, Hermione didn't get very far. Neither the students nor the elves themselves supported her cause. In the film, this subplot is completely omitted since neither Dobby nor Winky appear. Number 3. Neville gave the gillyweed instead of Dobby. When Harry was preparing for the second task of the tournament, he needed help. In the book, it was Dobby who brought him gillyweed, the magical plant that allows one to breathe underwater. In the film, that mission was given to Neville. The screenwriters likely wanted to give Neville more screen time, which makes sense, but they sacrificed the chance to further develop the House Elf storyline. Number 4. Ludo Bagman. Another cut character is Ludo Bagman, a former Quidditch player and head of the Department of Magical Games and Sports. His role in the book is substantial. He judges the tournament, helps organize the Quidditch World Cup, and despite suspicions of Death Eater connections, turns out to be just a compulsive gambler deeply in debt to goblins and the Weasley twins. The film leaves him out entirely, depriving us of a layer of intrigue, suspicion, and comic relief. Number 5. The First Task. The dragon battle is one of the most thrilling scenes both in the book and on screen, but the film version made it much more dynamic and chaotic. In the movie, the Hungarian horntail breaks free and wreaks havoc around the school, chasing Harry across the rooftops. In the book, the task takes place strictly within an arena, and the episode is much more focused. Sure, cinema demands spectacle, but it's worth remembering that the original scene was tense, even without all the added action. Number 6. Fleur's grandmother, Avila. Many fans wondered why Ron asked such an unattainable girl like Fleur Delacour to the Yule Ball. Even he knew he didn't stand a chance. The book gives a clear answer. Fleur's grandmother was Avila, a magical being who bewitched men. Fleur inherited part of this magic herself, which explains Ron's awkward behavior around her. The film skips this detail, making Ron's actions seem inexplicably naive. Number 7. Beauxbaton and Durmstrang. In the movie, Beauxbaton is shown as a girls' school, while Durmstrang appears to be for boys only. This simplification makes it easier for viewers to keep track, but in the books, both schools were co-educational. For example, Nicolas Flamel is said to have studied at Beauxbaton, and Durmstrang had female students as well. While not a critical change, it does distort our understanding of magical education beyond Britain. Number 8. Rita Skeeter's secret. Rita Skeeter's articles cause chaos. She twists Harry's words, invents romances, poisons public opinion. In the film, she's flashy and rude, but that's all. Her power is never explained. But in the book, Hermione discovers the truth. Rita isn't just nosy, she's an unregistered animagus. She turns into a beetle and hides where no one can see. That's how she spies. That's how she fills the Daily Prophet with secrets no one else could know. Hermione traps her in a jar, a literal glass jar. "I've been keeping her in my desk drawer," she says, smug and victorious. For weeks, Skeeter is a prisoner in beetle form, buzzing and helpless. Hermione doesn't crush her. She does something better. She uses her as leverage. She threatens to expose her to the Ministry. "You're going to keep your quill to yourself for a whole year," Hermione says. Not a single word. And Rita listens, because she has no choice. The movie skips all of this. We never see how Rita gets her stories. We never see how Hermione outsmarts her. We lose the payoff, the satisfaction. It's not just a clever plot twist. It's a moment that shows Hermione's brilliance, her strategy, her quiet fury. In a world where adults fail again and again, Hermione wins. She doesn't duel, she investigates, she watches, she acts, and she wins with a jar and a law book. The film gives us scandal. The book gives us justice. Number 9. Ron and Hermione's fight at the Yule Ball. The Yule Ball in the film is glittering and elegant. Hermione descends the staircase in pink silk, and Ron stares, stunned. But that's where it stops. We see jealousy, a few cold words, and silence. What we don't see is the explosion. In the book, the night ends in a fight. Ron lashes out. He sneers at Hermione for going with Victor Crumb. "You're fraternizing with the enemy," he spits. Hermione doesn't cry, not at first. She yells back. Her voice shakes. "Next time there's a ball, ask me before someone else does, not as a last resort." That line cuts deep. It reveals everything. Hermione waited, hoped. She wanted Ron to see her, really see her, not just as a friend or a bookworm. And Ron, too unsure of himself, never dared. So she said yes to Crumb, not to hurt Ron, but to be wanted. And when Ron mocks her for it, she breaks. In tears, she storms off, leaving Ron stunned, and Harry stuck in the middle. It's raw, awkward, real. It's teenagers learning how to feel and failing loudly. The film skips this emotional mess. It gives us tension but not heartbreak. It removes Hermione's rage and Ron's confusion. It removes her dignity and his shame. That fight mattered. It was the first crack in their friendship that revealed something deeper. Love, clumsy and unspoken. In the movie, they flirt with silence. In the book, they scream. And that scream is what makes them human. Number 10, the Sphinx in the maze. In the book, the maze is alive. Twisting paths, magical creatures, illusions, riddles. It's not just a test of courage, but of wit. And near the end, Harry finds her, a Sphinx, golden-eyed and still. She doesn't attack, she asks a riddle. First, think of the person who lives in disguise. It's long, complex, and eerily calm. The air is thick with silence. One wrong answer, and she'll stop him. But Harry listens, thinks, solves it. "Spider," he says. The Sphinx steps aside. That moment matters. It's one of the only times in the series where Harry wins not with his wand or instincts, but with logic. He isn't just brave, he's clever. The riddle is a trial of the mind, and Rowling lets us see Harry rise to it. It's a pause in the chaos, a mythic challenge straight out of ancient tales. It adds texture to the maze, makes the world feel older, deeper, more magical. But the film erases it completely. Instead, the movie maze closes in. The hedges roar. The sky darkens. There are no creatures, no riddles, no Sphinx, just walls and wind and a race to the cup. It turns the final task into a horror sequence, stripping it of variety and wonder. The absence of the Sphinx removes more than a scene. It removes Harry's quiet triumph, the chance to prove his mind is as sharp as his heart, a piece of magic lost in the dark. Number 11, Pensive Memories. The Pensive swirls in Dumbledore's office, silver and deep. In the film, Harry dips his face in and sees a single flash, Igor Karkaroff naming names. But that's it. The memory ends, a few shadows, a name, a nod. What the movie misses is the weight of history buried in that basin. In the book, Harry doesn't just watch a scene, he is dragged through the Ministry's darkest moments. He witnesses 3 trials, and the most devastating is the fall of Barty Crouch Jr. The courtroom is cold. Crouch Sr. stands like a statue, his voice sharp as steel. "You are no son of mine," he says, sentencing his own child to Azkaban. His son, barely out of school, screams and begs, I didn't! Father, please!" But his father looks away. The chains bind him, the Dementors close in. Harry, hidden in the memory, watches this all with horror. The boy who will later become Mad-Eye Moody's imposter was once just a terrified son thrown into hell by the man who raised him. These memories matter. They show how far the Ministry went to fight Voldemort, how fear turned justice into cruelty, and how a father's pride destroyed a family. Crouch Jr.'s betrayal isn't born in a vacuum. It's rooted in pain, punishment, and silence. The film skips all this. It shows a villain's reveal, but not the path that led there. Without the Pensive's full truth, Barty Crouch Jr. is just a twist, not a tragedy. The Pensive is more than a plot device. It's a key to the past. It explains why Crouch Sr. hides his son, why Dumbledore doubts the Ministry, why Harry begins to understand that darkness isn't always loud. It can be quiet, legal, and dressed in robes of justice. The movie leaves these truths untouched. The book dives in, and what it finds is more terrifying than any spell. Number 12, prize money and the Weasley twins. The Triwizard Tournament ends with a funeral. Cedric is dead, Voldemort has returned, and Harry, though declared the winner, feels no victory. He is handed a sack of gold, 1,000 galleons, but stares at it like it's cursed. In the book, he makes a decision that says everything about who he is. He doesn't keep the money, he doesn't want it. "Take it," he says to Fred and George. "Start up your joke shop." It's quiet, almost casual, but it changes their future. Fred and George are stunned. They argue, they hesitate, but Harry insists. He knows the world needs laughter now more than ever. He knows they need it, and he trusts them. It's not just generosity, it's hope, it's healing. "I don't want it," he repeats, pressing the gold into their hands. That gold becomes Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, the joke shop that will later brighten Diagon Alley during the darkest of times. It all starts with that moment, a moment the film never shows. In the movie, there's no mention of prize money, no gesture, no foreshadowing of the brilliant inventors Fred and George are becoming. Their shop just appears later, successful and strange, as if conjured from thin air. But in the book, the shop is built with pain, loyalty, and quiet heroism. Without this scene, the bond between Harry and the twins loses depth. Their trust in each other, their shared defiance against darkness, it fades into the background. The omission is small, but the loss is big. Harry's refusal of the gold is more than grief. It's a stand. He turns tragedy into something lasting, into laughter, into rebellion. The film skips it, and by doing so, it skips a moment of magic, not the kind cast with wands, but the kind that shows who Harry really is. A boy who wins and walks away, a friend who gives everything and asks for nothing. Number 13, the Wizarding World's reaction to Voldemort's return. Voldemort rises from the cauldron, pale and snake-like, and the graveyard scene explodes with fear. The film delivers the moment with power, spells, screams, the touch of a wand that burns. But then it ends. Harry returns with Cedric's body, the music swells and the screen fades. What comes after, what truly matters, is almost entirely missing. The chaos doesn't ripple, the wizarding world doesn't tremble, and the Ministry? Silent. In the book, the return of Voldemort shakes the ground beneath every wizard's feet, but instead of rallying to protect the people, Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge chooses denial. He sees the body. He hears Harry's words. He listens to Dumbledore speak with grim certainty. And he rejects it all. "He's not back!" Fudge shouts. "He's not back! You're mad!" His fear of losing power outweighs the truth. Rather than face Voldemort, Fudge begins a campaign of lies. The fallout is immediate. Dumbledore is branded as dangerous. Harry is dismissed as unstable. The Daily Prophet publishes headlines that mock him. The boy who lies, they call him. Teachers hesitate. Students whisper. Instead of uniting, the magical community fractures, all because one man refuses to face the return of evil. This is the moment when the war begins, not with a battle, but with a refusal to believe. The book makes that clear. The film delays it. By skipping this reaction, the movie undercuts the stakes. When the credits roll, Voldemort is back, yes, but the world seems unchanged. There is no fear in the streets, no whispering in the halls, no mistrust boiling beneath the surface. But in the book, the shadow spreads fast. It taints everything. Dumbledore knows it. "Dark and difficult times lie ahead, Harry," he says. "Soon we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy." The film chose easy. The book shows you what it costs. Number 14, Barty Crouch Sr. disappears without explanation. Barty Crouch Sr. stumbles through the woods like a ghost. In the film he mutters nonsense, eyes wide with fear, coat dirty, face pale, and then he vanishes, just like that. No explanation, no aftermath. Viewers are left confused, wondering if they missed something. But in the book his disappearance isn't a mystery, it's a murder, and it changes everything. Crouch Sr. had been under the Imperious Curse, controlled by his own son, Barty Crouch Jr., who was impersonating Mad-Eye Moody. For months, the father was hidden away, drugged and silenced, but he broke free. He began to fight back. He escaped the house, he wandered off, he was trying to get to Dumbledore. Crouch Jr. reveals during his confession, the father was desperate to warn the world. He never made it. His own son killed him. To keep the secret. Winky, the dismissed house elf, plays a heartbreaking role in this tragedy. She had cared for Barty Jr. in secret, still treating him like a child. "Master Barty was a bad boy," she sobs. "Ah, but he was my boy." The elf's grief and confusion make the betrayal even sharper. In contrast, the film erases her entirely. No Winky, no confession, no layers, just silence. By cutting this arc, the movie removes the beating heart of the mystery. In the book, Crouch Sr.'s death reveals the lengths to which Death Eaters will go and how blind ambition can destroy a family. It's not just a subplot, it's the soul of the story's darkness. Without it, the whole tournament feels like a game. With it, it becomes a tragedy. Number 15, the transformation of Barty Crouch Jr. When Alastor Moody finally drops the act in Dumbledore's office and the truth cracks wide open, the moment is supposed to send a chill down the spine. The fearsome aura turns out to be someone else entirely, Barty Crouch Jr., a Death Eater who had been hiding under the surface all along, using Polyjuice Potion to assume Moody's identity. The movie version of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire captures the basic structure of the reveal. The real Moody is found imprisoned in a magical trunk, disoriented but alive. Barty Crouch Jr. is unmasked, his eyes wide, his tongue flicking out disturbingly in a reptilian manner. It is a scene with drama, certainly, but it lacks the full measure of horror. The film gives us a villain who is creepy and strange. The book gives us a villain who is terrifying in a completely different way. Utterly consumed by his loyalty to Lord Voldemort, raving and broken, obsessed beyond comprehension. That crucial aspect was erased. In the book, when the effects of the Polyjuice Potion wear off, Barty Crouch Jr. doesn't just revert physically, his mind erupts. The protective cover of another man's body had kept his true madness in check. Once it fades, the fevered passion he holds for Voldemort pours out like poison. What readers witness is not just the exposure of a deceiver, but the unveiling of what blind devotion can do to a person's soul. "The Dark Lord has returned," he says. "He has come for me. I knew he would. I knew he would come." His voice, as Rowling writes, trembles with ecstasy. It is not fear that drives him, nor guilt. It is something far worse, joy. His entire identity is swallowed by the cause. He speaks of Voldemort with reverence so intense it burns, calling him the most brilliant student Hogwarts has ever seen. The book's description is not simply theatrical, it is clinical in its terror. Crouch doesn't just confess, he testifies. It reads like a cult member's final sermon delivered in a trance of worship. "He is my master," he cries. "He has come for me." The repetition, the intensity, the complete lack of remorse, it peels back the human mask. He's not just a follower, he is consumed. The scene doesn't give the audience the relief of closure. Instead, it confronts the reader with a question. What does it take to become this hollow? The difference between the two portrayals, film and book, is not just cosmetic, it's thematic. The book version of Barty Crouch Jr. is a warning about ideology pushed to the brink of madness. His fanaticism is not theatrical evil, it's raw, unfiltered obsession. In the film, David Tennant's performance is eerie. Yes, the lip-licking is memorable, but it is a surface gesture. There is no descent into the abyss of belief, no sense that this is a man who has surrendered everything, family, future, morality, for the idea of Voldemort. The horror is reduced to a facial tic. In Rowling's text, the transformation is symbolic. As soon as the polyjuice fades, Crouch Jr. slips into a state of wild-eyed truth-telling. It's as if the mask of Moody not only protected his identity but suppressed the madness. Once removed, there is no longer a barrier between his devotion and the world. He tells them how he used the unforgivable curses, how he manipulated the Triwizard Tournament to bring Harry to Voldemort, how he lived day by day in the skin of a man who hated everything he stood for, and yet he does not tremble with regret. He swells with purpose. My master knew I would not fail him. He is the Dark Lord, he knows all. He has risen again, and I was his most faithful servant. Even Dumbledore is shaken by the spectacle. The memory of Bartemius Crouch Sr., the stern, rule-bound father who once sent his own son to Azkaban, looms like a ghost in the room. It is this contrast that stings most. The child of order becomes the vessel of chaos. In the book, we are reminded that Barty Jr. had once been a promising student, a clever boy with a future. But something turned, and that something was Voldemort's promise of power and recognition. The movie does not show that transformation, it shows only the result, and so it loses the thread of tragedy. There is something uniquely unsettling in how Barty Crouch Jr. clings to Voldemort's name like a rosary. It is not love, it is spiritual replacement. In the absence of a father's approval, in the void left by society's rejection, Crouch finds transcendence in servitude. He speaks not as an accomplice, but as a disciple. He taught me, he says, he showed me the way. These are not the words of a man caught in wrongdoing. They are the confessions of one who believes he has seen the light. That makes him more dangerous than the coldest killer. There is a poetic symmetry in Rowling's decision to place the revelation in Dumbledore's office. Here, in the room of reason, wisdom, and balance, erupts a tidal wave of fanaticism. Dumbledore, ever the voice of calm judgment, tries to question him, but the boy, if he can still be called that, spirals. The truth spills out not in defense but in praise. The Dark Lord has ways of returning to power that are unknown to the Ministry of Magic, he says. And he smiles, not with mischief, with satisfaction. He believes himself victorious, even in chains. Number 16, the real Mad-Eye Moody. The moment Barty Crouch Jr. is revealed as the imposter behind Mad-Eye Moody's electric blue eye and scarred face, the audience of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is left breathless. The twist is gripping, executed with cinematic flair. But what the film forgets, what it deliberately chooses to leave behind, is the real Alastor Moody himself. After being trapped in a magical trunk for nearly a year, deprived of freedom, his identity stolen by a Death Eater, Moody is reduced to a footnote in the adaptation. And yet in the book, his brief appearance at the end of the ordeal carries weight, pain, and power, a glimpse into the consequences the film was too hasty to explore. In the novel, when the real Moody is finally released from the 7-compartment trunk, he's a wreck. Not just physically disoriented, but psychologically shaken. J.K. Rowling doesn't dwell on the details for long, but even in the short interaction, it's evident that the trauma has left scars. The real Moody was still inside the trunk, weak and dazed. His magical eye was missing. His wooden leg had been removed. He looked completely exhausted. The man who once terrified the Ministry's worst enemies was now a prisoner of their tactics, stripped of his power and identity. It's a harrowing image, stark and raw, and it was completely cut from the film. The omission does more than neglect a character. It alters the story's emotional gravity. In the movie, we are enthralled by Brendan Gleeson's portrayal of the faux Moody, gritty, enigmatic, brilliant in his paranoia. But the character we follow through most of the school year isn't Moody at all. It's Crouch Jr., wearing his skin like a costume, weaponizing his aura of danger and eccentricity to manipulate Harry and the Triwizard Tournament. Without seeing the true Moody, the audience never gets to grasp the betrayal, the violation, the stripping of autonomy he endured. The real man disappears into the shadows of the story. Rowling's choice to include the real Moody, even briefly, isn't just about tying loose ends. It is a reminder of what's at stake. This is not a whimsical tale of magical competitions and dragons. It is war, and in war, people suffer. The fact that an aura as skilled and feared as Moody could be subdued so completely by dark magic shows just how powerful and methodical Voldemort's forces were becoming. When Dumbledore orders Moody to be taken to the hospital wing and be examined, it isn't just a precaution, it's a moment of respect, of recognizing the toll exacted on a soldier left behind. By removing this moment, the film reduces Moody to a mask. There is no confrontation with the aftermath, no reckoning with what it means to be used like a puppet in a master plan. It simplifies the narrative, ensuring that the momentum never breaks, but at the cost of the emotional truth. Readers of the book know that Moody, even broken, is more than his magical artifacts. He's a symbol of resistance, of integrity worn down by sacrifice, and his absence in the film's resolution is a hollow silence where there should be catharsis. The contrast is especially jarring when considering how integral the fake Moody is to the plot. He guides Harry, mentors him, watches over him. His presence is constant and strangely reassuring. That warmth is calculated, of course. It's all part of Crouch's deception, but it builds an attachment in the viewer. When he is unmasked, the betrayal stings. Yet without seeing the man whose identity was stolen, the betrayal lands incompletely. The viewer is betrayed by Crouch, but not on Moody's behalf, because the real Moody has not been allowed to exist. In the book, there's a moment where Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape open the trunk's compartments, finding Moody at the very bottom, the deepest layer. It's symbolic. The real man buried beneath illusion and control, gasping to reassert himself. Rowling doesn't over-explain. She allows the image to stand. Mad-Eye, hair wild, eye gone, leg gone, groaning in confusion. It's enough. In those few lines, the reader can fill in the horror of months in a magically sustained prison, listening to his own voice used against his beliefs, his actions twisted in service of Voldemort. His eye, his infamous magical eye, is taken from him and used by Crouch Jr. throughout the year. The violation is grotesque, and yet the film does not return it to him, nor even comment on it. That eye became a cinematic prop, one that Gleeson's version would continue to wear in the next installments. But in the books, that eye had meaning. It represented vigilance, trauma, and the literal loss of privacy. That Moody's eye could be removed and wielded by an enemy underscores how far the Death Eaters were willing to go, and how little the films were willing to linger in that darkness. The result is a story where the viewer is robbed of closure. Moody does not speak. He is not given a moment to reclaim his name, his strength, his dignity. Dumbledore doesn't engage with him in any meaningful way. He vanishes. Meanwhile, the plot hurries forward. Cedric is dead. Voldemort is back. The Ministry is in denial. The film's pacing leaves no room for grief, much less for one more casualty in the war nobody is ready to acknowledge. And yet, Moody's suffering would have been the perfect punctuation, quiet, grim, and powerful. Thematically, Moody's ordeal aligns with one of the series' core messages: identity matters. What defines a person? Their appearance, their deeds, their intent? When Crouch impersonates Moody, he performs good deeds, he teaches useful magic, he protects Harry, he mentors Neville. But all of it is a manipulation. It's a mask worn expertly. The real Moody, stripped of everything that defines him, his voice, his limbs, even his presence, becomes the tragic counterweight. The good that came from his name was a lie. The pain was real. Number 17, Witch Weekly and the smear campaign against Hermione. In the fourth book of the Harry Potter series, The Goblet of Fire, a storm brews not only on the Quidditch pitch or within the walls of the Triwizard Tournament, but also in the quiet corners of gossip and ink. A key storyline, quietly smothered in the cinematic adaptation, is the ruthless media assault orchestrated by none other than Rita Skeeter, the Daily Prophet's most scandal-hungry journalist. Her pen doesn't just distort facts, it poisons reputations. And in her crosshairs stands Hermione Granger, who becomes a victim of slander, jealousy, and whispered cruelty. This thread, vividly portrayed in the novel, gives weight to Hermione's character in a way the film carelessly strips away, leaving out a powerful commentary on toxic media and adolescent resilience. Rita Skeeter's interest in Hermione is not professional curiosity. It is predatory instinct. From the moment she observes Hermione in the company of Victor Krum, Skeeter sees a narrative ripe for exploitation. Victor, the silent, brooding Durmstrang champion, publicly shows affection for Hermione. He writes her letters, invites her to the Yule Ball, and even spends time with her in the library. This, alone, is enough to rattle the foundations of Hogwarts' social hierarchy, but it becomes front-page gold when Skeeter spins it into a sordid love triangle. The infamous article, printed in Witch Weekly, reads, "Harry Potter's secret heartache. Harry Potter, aged 14, who defeated you-know-who 3 times already, was recently devastated to learn that the girl he has been sweet on for months has been dating a certain Bulgarian seeker behind his back." The deliberate use of Harry's fame, Krum's allure, and Hermione's position as the other girl creates a firestorm of judgment. What follows is a flurry of consequences far more damaging than mere whispers in the corridors. Hermione begins receiving hate mail, unsigned, foul letters laced with magical curses. One such letter contains undiluted bubotuber pus, causing painful boils to erupt on her hands. Another letter calls her a scarlet woman, a phrase she reads with disbelief before realizing the depth of loathing behind those anonymous words. These moments, brief but cutting, never made it to the big screen. But in the pages of the book, they serve as a raw portrayal of what it means to be a young girl at the mercy of adult lies and schoolyard cruelty. It's not just about hurt feelings, it's about humiliation, fear, and violation. The magazine in question, Witch Weekly, known for its fluffy recipes and hex advice, becomes an unexpected weapon in Skeeter's hands. In her article, Hermione is painted as manipulative, using her charm to entangle not one but 2 famous boys. The irony, of course, is cruel. Hermione, who is grounded in intelligence, loyalty, and moral clarity, is caricatured as a heartbreaker with a hunger for fame. For a character so often seen as confident and composed, this storyline reveals the cracks beneath the surface, the cost of becoming visible, especially as a girl in a world still struggling with its own magical patriarchy. Ron's reaction to the article is one of the rare moments of awkward solidarity. While his own jealousy simmers throughout the tournament, he never fully engages with the media portrayal, but others do. Lavender Brown and Parvati Patil cast Hermione's sidelong glances. Girls whisper behind textbooks, and some older students utter about how fame always changes people. In this climate, Hermione continues attending classes, walks the halls with her chin up, but privately confides in Harry about the disturbing letters. "They're just words," she says, trying to dismiss them, but the bags under her eyes and her tense posture betray the toll it takes. What Rita Skeeter does in the book isn't simple character assassination. It's the magical world's version of tabloid warfare. Skeeter's method of gathering information, later revealed to be her unregistered status as an animagus, is itself a violation of trust and boundaries. She transforms into a beetle to eavesdrop on private conversations, a metaphor as well as a plot point. Her intrusion is physical, invasive, and secretive, underscoring just how insidious her campaign against Hermione becomes. The fact that Skeeter's writing is believed by so many only compounds the harm. It shows how easily truth is twisted when wrapped in clever phrases and decorative fonts. Hermione, ever the researcher, eventually discovers Skeeter's secret and captures her in a jar. But this moment of triumph comes after weeks of torment. The fact that she chooses not to expose Skeeter to the Ministry, opting instead for silent leverage, is a mark of Hermione's ethical strength. She holds power but does not abuse it, a subtle contrast to Skeeter's reckless misuse of words. This choice reflects a theme lost in the film adaptation: justice without cruelty, boundaries without vengeance. It is one of the most mature decisions made by any character her age in the series. The movie version of The Goblet of Fire bypasses this entire arc, opting instead for a brief glance at Hermione's role as Victor's date and a few jealous glances from Ron. The scene at the Yule Ball becomes the focal point of their triangle, devoid of the larger consequences, but what's lost is not just context, it's Hermione's emotional journey. In the film, she is briefly radiant, then angry at Ron, and finally forgotten in the next scene. There is no mention of the letters, no suggestion of public scorn, and certainly no catharsis when Skeeter is exposed. This omission flattens Hermione's character, turning a story of strength and injustice into a simple teenage spat. In the book, Dumbledore remains aware of the media's influence. He speaks indirectly of the importance of truth, even joking about Skeeter's exaggerations during the weighing of the wand ceremony. But for Hermione, there is no such levity. Her pain is not humorous, and her response is not reactive. She continues to do her homework, advocate for the rights of house elves, and support Harry through every deadly task. This resilience, in the face of ridicule and gossip, is what defines her in this volume more than any romantic subplot. By excluding this subplot, the film misses an opportunity to comment on the real-world parallels of media shaming and school bullying. In today's terms, Hermione was doxed, her private relationships broadcasted and distorted for public consumption. The idea that even in a magical world, young girls are targets of sexist rumors and envy makes the story resonate more deeply with readers. It also adds dimension to Rita Skeeter, portraying her not just as a comic nuisance, but as a genuine antagonist, one whose weapon is her pen. More than that, the book offers a glimpse into how fame warps reality. Harry, Crumb, and Hermione are all caught in this triangle of speculation, none of them actively participating in the narrative being spun around them. Crumb, who is sincere in his affection, becomes a prop in the story. Harry, embarrassed and confused, becomes a victim of emotional misrepresentation, and Hermione, the real focus of the attack, bears the brunt of it all because she dared to exist outside of what people expected from a girl like her. This is storytelling at its most painful and most honest. Hermione's eventual confrontation with Skeeter is not loud or violent. Instead, it's silent, calculated, and just. She traps her in beetle form, places her in a magically sealed jar, and carries her in her school bag. The symbolism is rich. The predator becomes the prisoner, and truth is once again hidden, but this time for protection, not profit. "You're going to stay in there and shut up until I decide what to do with you," Hermione tells her, a line that reveals both fury and maturity. This is a teenager setting boundaries, taking back control from an adult who abused power. Readers remember Hermione's stand not because it was flashy, but because it was brave. In a world where battles are fought with wands and dragons, hers was fought with silence and endurance. The poisoned letters, the whispers, the isolation, none of it broke her. Instead, it revealed a kind of courage that goes unnoticed in action scenes. It is the courage to remain kind when the world turns cruel, the courage to rise above the lies, the courage to wait for the right moment to speak. What the Goblet of Fire shows through this lens is that being a hero doesn't always mean winning a tournament or fighting a Death Eater. Sometimes it means reading a hurtful letter, hiding the tears, and walking into class as though nothing happened. It means holding the truth close to your heart and not letting hate reshape your identity. And most importantly, it means refusing to become what the world falsely believes you are. The story Rita Skeeter writes is fiction, but the strength Hermione displays in surviving it is very real, and that perhaps is the most powerful magic of all. Number 18, Harry, refuses the tournament winnings. The Triwizard Tournament had never been meant to end in death. What began as a showcase of magical prowess between schools culminated in the return of Voldemort and the murder of a Hogwarts student. The victory was hollow, choked in grief and ash, and the golden prize meant to celebrate triumph became a symbol of something Harry Potter could never accept. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the book dares to explore this discomfort. The film, however, neatly steps over it, choosing spectacle over soul. It fails to show one of Harry's most defining moments, his refusal to accept the Triwizard winnings, and later his quiet, redemptive gift to Fred and George Weasley. That omission, subtle but significant, strips away a layer of Harry's complex morality. When Harry returns from the graveyard carrying Cedric Diggory's body, he is not a boy who has just won a game. He is a witness, a mourner, a survivor. The 1,000 galleons offered to him as a reward for winning the tournament feel grotesque in his hands. In the novel, Rowling allows this emotional repulsion to breathe. Harry's internal turmoil becomes palpable as he considers what the money represents. He doesn't hesitate. "Take it back," he tells the officials. But they won't, so he tries again. He had no use for 1,000 galleons, Rowling writes, and if he had, he would not have accepted them. This isn't just a throwaway act of modesty. It's a boy standing at the edge of his own trauma, drawing a line between what was earned and what was paid in blood. Cedric's death wasn't collateral damage, it was the price, and Harry refuses to profit from it. The moment reveals something profound. Harry's moral compass is not shaped by rules but by conscience. He isn't noble for the sake of appearance. He feels sick to his stomach at the thought of being rewarded for surviving something that should never have happened. The film adaptation brushes past this discomfort, never addressing the weight of the prize or Harry's refusal. A critical layer of his character vanishes in that choice. Later, in a quieter moment that the film also ignores, Harry entrusts the winnings to Fred and George. This is not a comical aside, not a gesture played for laughs. It is a choice made in silence, in grief, and in hope. The twins dream of opening a joke shop, but lack the means. Harry, still grieving, sees in them something he needs to believe in, a future. He doesn't just give them the gold, he gives them the possibility of joy in dark times. He chooses to invest in laughter, in resilience, in the pure foolishness that keeps people sane when the world becomes unbearable. Fred and George are stunned. They try to protest, of course, but Harry insists. "Oh, I don't want it," he tells them. "You take it and get inventing." It's a line delivered with no fanfare, just conviction. In that moment, Harry is more than a reluctant champion. He is someone who knows the true cost of violence. Someone who seeks to build something even if he can't repair what was broken. The film replaces this nuanced, emotionally charged decision with nothing. No moment of refusal, no moment of giving. Just the unspoken assumption that the money was used somehow, somewhere off-screen. The book makes it unmistakably clear that Harry's action is not rooted in guilt alone. It is a rejection of a world that assigns value to survival. Cedric is gone. Voldemort is back. And the Ministry still thinks a pile of gold can close the wound. Harry won't let them. The act of giving the money away is his quiet rebellion. He may not be able to speak out, too traumatized, too young, but he acts. In a world of corrupt officials and muted truths, his gesture rings louder than any protest. This depth, this contradiction, mourning while hoping, giving while hurting, is what defines Harry in the aftermath of the tournament. It's what makes him more than a chosen one. It makes him real. Rowling doesn't glorify him. She shows him bruised, bitter, emotionally raw. And yet, out of that pain, he chooses kindness. To omit that is to flatten him into a symbol rather than a person. The film allows him to be a passive participant in his own story. The book gives him agency even when he's falling apart. What's more, this money, these 1,000 galleons, becomes the seed for something extraordinary. Fred and George, inspired and empowered, go on to create Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, a bastion of laughter in the darkest times. During the Second Wizarding War, their shop is more than a joke store. It's a symbol of defiance, of colour and chaos in the face of tyranny. And it was Harry's gift, born from grief, that planted it. Without his refusal, without his generosity, this would not exist. The film never connects these dots. It never traces the line from Cedric's death to Diagon Alley's loudest storefront. It robs the audience of seeing how grief, when met with compassion, can transform into something powerful. Even Fred and George never forget. In Order of the Phoenix, when they describe their plans and progress, there's a lingering gratitude. They never boast about the money. They respect the weight of the gift. It's understood between them that this was no ordinary investment. It came from loss, from love, and from someone who saw their worth when no one else did. They rise with that gold, not just financially, but in spirit. They become creators, rebels, protectors of joy, because Harry saw something in them worth trusting. By cutting the scene of refusal, the film simplifies Harry's arc. It smooths out the uncomfortable edges that make him interesting. There is no reckoning with grief, no discomfort with glory, just a blank space between tragedy and normalcy. But in the book, that space is filled with emotion, choice, and consequence. It is filled with Harry standing in front of something he doesn't want and choosing to turn it into something meaningful. That is character, that is story. In the grand tapestry of Goblet of Fire, this might seem like a minor thread, but pull it and you'll see how much begins to unravel. The book is not just about dragons and mermaids and mazes. It's about how a boy faces the darkness of adulthood, how he navigates guilt and responsibility, how he chooses what kind of man he wants to become. And in that one decision, to reject a prize, to pass it on to others, he shows more bravery than in any magical duel. There's something deeply human in that refusal. Harry doesn't want praise, he doesn't want reward, he wants justice. And when he can't have that, he settles for integrity. The gesture isn't grand, it's quiet, and that's what makes it powerful. In a story so often filled with explosions and spells, it is this soft moment of moral clarity that leaves a lasting mark. 1,000 galleons could never buy that kind of courage. What the film adaptation forgets is that character is not built in action scenes but in choices. Not in battles, but in moments when no one is watching. Harry's rejection of the prize is unseen by most, uncelebrated, but it matters. It defines him. It informs everything that comes after. Without it, his later battles lose context. His leadership seems automatic, rather than earned through pain and principle. Rowling's writing gives Harry the burden of conscience. She doesn't let him escape the weight of what he's seen. He has nightmares. He avoids eye contact. He feels unworthy. But still he acts with kindness. Giving the money to Fred and George isn't about charity, it's about faith. He believes in them more than he believes in himself at that moment. And that belief changes everything. In a story where magic can mend bones and transfigure objects, it is this act, this simple, human gesture, that transforms people. It sets into motion a future that Harry can't yet see. One where laughter becomes a weapon, and dreams become resistance. The gold becomes legacy, not of victory but of choice, of who Harry chose to be in the shadow of loss. That is the scene the film forgot, not just Harry giving away a bag of coins, but Harry choosing what kind of world he wants to live in, choosing to build, not to hoard, to share, not to shrink. That quiet strength, born from grief, is what makes him a hero, not the scar, not the wand, not the prophecy, but the refusal and the gift. Number 19, Moaning Myrtle flirting with Harry. In the quiet steam of the prefect's bathroom, bathed in candlelight and pearly soap bubbles, a scene unfolded in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire that lingered with far more strangeness in the pages of the book than it ever did on the screen. The film adaptation offered a polite version, Harry submerged in a bath, the mysterious egg emitting its shrill screech, and the ghost of Moaning Myrtle floating by with only a mischievous tone and a passing joke, but the novel dared to wade deeper into the murky waters of discomfort and loneliness, revealing an encounter that was more than just awkward. J.K. Rowling sculpted a moment filled with eerie vulnerability as the ghost of a long-dead girl hovered inches away from a naked teenage boy, searching for attention in all the wrong places. Moaning Myrtle, whose real name had once been Myrtle Elizabeth Warren, had always been a figure of comic misery at Hogwarts. Haunting the plumbing and sobbing in the stalls, she was known for her tantrums and toilet-flushing dramatics. But in the fourth book, when Harry needed to uncover the secret of the golden egg, his clue for the second task, he encountered a different side of her. A spectral girl who was not just annoying or emotional, but truly, desperately lonely. The kind of lonely that drove her to observe the living in their most private moments, as if merely watching could fill the void death had carved inside her. Myrtle didn't just offer help. She lingered. She floated just under the surface of the water, mere inches from Harry's submerged form. Her translucent eyes gazed up at him, and Harry couldn't be sure whether to feel embarrassed or unnerved. The book does not shy away from the discomfort. She was now lying on her side, her head on her hand, staring at Harry, who wished she would stop. Rowling wrote it plainly, allowing the reader to feel that same shiver of uncertainty, the blush rising on Harry's cheeks, mirrored in our own. What made the moment even stranger was Myrtle's casual admission that she had done this before, not just with Harry. She had apparently watched Cedric Diggory take his bath, and not only Cedric. She hinted, slyly, that she had also peeped on Victor Crumb. "He's a good-looking boy," she said in the book, adding that she'd watched him practice the egg too. There was no shame in her words. No filter, either. Myrtle had been dead for decades. She had no sense of propriety left, only a craving for company, for some fleeting connection to the warmth of the living. That's where the film stripped away the richness of the moment. Instead of delving into the pathos of Myrtle's bizarre behavior, it dressed the scene in humor and gave it a whimsical score. Myrtle hovered around Harry, made a joke about long hours alone in the bath, and the audience chuckled, but the scene quickly faded, avoiding the depth of her desperation. The book's version, by contrast, was drenched in implications. Myrtle wasn't just being cheeky. She was confessing to something far more profound, that she had watched, longed, and remained invisible, forever denied the life she still yearned for. The book presented Myrtle as a tragic paradox. She died as a young girl, bullied and unwanted, and now, trapped in the same adolescent form, she wandered the castle, trying to participate in a world that had long moved on without her. Her flirty behavior wasn't played for laughs, it was a symptom of her eternal loneliness. Her presence in the bathroom with Harry wasn't just awkward, it was a cry for help. She didn't want to scare him, she wanted him to stay, and that's what made it so unsettling. The boundaries between right and wrong, comfort and discomfort, were blurred by Myrtle's ghostly yearning. Harry, for his part, was clearly disturbed. Rowling described how he sank deeper into the bubbles, trying to hide himself from her watchful gaze. He wasn't threatened, but he wasn't at ease either. It was one of the rare moments in the series where Harry, so often brave in the face of danger, was left fumbling, unsure how to respond. Myrtle's presence forced him into a vulnerable position, not as a hero or a champion, but as a teenage boy, alone, naked, and watched by someone who had no business being there. It was a moment of human awkwardness, not magical peril. The tragedy is that this moment, so layered and telling in the book, was transformed in the film into a scene of mere comic relief. Gone were Myrtle's hints at voyeurism. Gone was Harry's deep discomfort. Gone was the sense that this wasn't just a weird bathroom chat. It was a window into the psychological damage of a ghost who never moved on. Rowling, with her usual subtle brilliance, had taken a silly character and, in just a few pages, made her heartbreakingly real. In omitting those layers, the film missed an opportunity to explore one of the darker, sadder truths of the wizarding world. Ghosts like Myrtle aren't just floating punchlines. They are the souls of the departed who couldn't let go. Myrtle died tragically, yes, but she also lived tragically. And now she existed in a limbo where her only way to feel noticed was to intrude on the living. Her interaction with Harry wasn't just about the egg, it was about being seen. Myrtle's strange flirtation was more than just inappropriate, it was symbolic. In a castle full of magic, power, and ancient secrets, she was a reminder of what Hogwarts could not heal: loneliness, trauma, and the weight of an unlived life. Myrtle had never kissed a boy. She had never gone to a ball. She had never known love, desire, or even lasting friendship. And in death, those cravings remained, twisted by time and isolation into something uncomfortable but deeply human. When she offered Harry advice on how to listen to the egg underwater, it wasn't out of selflessness. It was an offering, a way to be useful, to be remembered, perhaps even to be liked. She wanted to matter to someone, and in that moment, Harry's need for help aligned with her need for relevance. It was a transaction of attention. Harry received guidance, and Myrtle received validation. The way Rowling wove all of that into a single bathroom scene was masterful. The silence of the water, the ghost's lingering gaze, the boy's shrinking form beneath the bubbles, every detail worked together to create an atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. It wasn't a horror scene, it wasn't a romance, it was something far more elusive, a moment of deeply awkward, emotionally complex connection between the living and the dead. And yet the film brushed it aside. It trimmed the conversation, polished away the discomfort, and presented Myrtle as a quirky nuisance. This version suited the tone of a PG-13 blockbuster, but it robbed the audience of one of the story's most haunting truths: that even ghosts, with all their oddities, carry scars. That even in a world of dragons and mermaids, the most terrifying thing might be the eyes of someone who never stopped watching. Myrtle's behavior raises difficult questions. Should we feel pity for her? Disgust? Sympathy? The book allows us to feel all three. It doesn't judge her. It merely presents her, raw and exposed, like Harry himself in the bath. That's the power of Rowling's writing. She trusts the reader to sit in discomfort and find meaning there. The film, by contrast, offers only a chuckle and a cutaway. And perhaps that's the saddest part of all. because Myrtle, in all her ghostly weirdness, was one of the few characters who truly showed what it meant to be forgotten, what it meant to be alone in a place full of people. Her flirty comments weren't just played for laughs, they were the only language she had left. A sad attempt at interaction, a ghost trying, even in death, to live. When we read the book, we see her as more than comic relief. We see a girl frozen in time, trapped in her adolescent desires and insecurities, denied closure by a basilisk's deadly stare, and left to haunt the echoes of her old school. That scene in the bathroom wasn't just about helping Harry open an egg. It was about Myrtle trying, one last time, to feel like she belonged. And Harry, despite his unease, never pushed her away. He never mocked her. He listened. He blushed. He took her help. And in that silent exchange, Rowling gave Myrtle what the film never did, a moment of dignity, however strange, in a world that had always overlooked her. Number 20, the Hogwarts kitchens. The absence of the Hogwarts kitchen in the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire was more than just a simple omission. It was a decision that quietly erased an essential part of the magical world's texture. In the book, the moment when Harry, Ron and Hermione first discover the kitchen is not only an atmospheric delight but also a critical juncture for character development and thematic richness. It is beneath the Great Hall, where identical tables mirror those above, and dozens of house elves scurry about with genuine pride in their work. Their labour may seem invisible to the students, but it is the heartbeat of the castle's day-to-day life, and J.K. Rowling gives readers the rare opportunity to peer behind that curtain. It's a place of warmth and tradition, yet also the root of ethical questions that begin to challenge the trio's understanding of justice in the wizarding world. In this cosy underground world, the elves prepare meals with a kind of cheerful industry that initially bewilders Hermione. Her shock is understandable. The kitchen is not a gloomy dungeon, but a bright, bustling place where copper pots gleam and desserts float in mid-air. It contradicts any expectation that servitude must come with visible suffering. But it is precisely this contradiction that ignites Hermione's conscience. The narrative stakes here are not merely magical, they are moral. It's in this room, amid trays of treacle tart and pumpkin pasties, that she founds SPEW, the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. This minor subplot in the film is completely erased, and with it vanishes one of the few moments in the series where a student confronts the ethical implications of the wizarding status quo. The kitchen is also the site where Dobby re-enters the story, not as a tragic figure or a prisoner, but as a newly employed elf, a free elf. His presence in the kitchen symbolizes the fragile beginning of change. When Dobby tells Harry that Professor Dumbledore has hired him with pay and days off, it's a radical statement within the logic of the wizarding world. As Dobby says in Goblet of Fire, Dobby is free and Dobby is paid. His pride in this achievement is profound, and it gives substance to the idea that liberation is possible. Without the kitchen, the film loses a key moment of hope and transformation for Dobby, whose narrative otherwise remains static until his death in Deathly Hallows. The omission of the kitchen also weakens Hermione's arc as a character who challenges established norms. In the film, her righteous anger over house elf mistreatment is largely absent, making her seem less idealistic and more reactionary in her feminist or activist tendencies. But in the book, her insistence on speaking for the elves, even when they protest, makes her both admirable and flawed. This complexity is one of the few times Hermione operates independently of school assignments or adult approval. When she crafts SPEW badges and tries to rally support, we see her in a new light, as a passionate, often misunderstood activist whose convictions are ahead of her time. This subplot also underscores a critical theme in the Potter universe, the tension between tradition and justice. The elves' devotion to their work and their resistance to Hermione's campaign forces readers to grapple with uncomfortable questions. Are they happy because they're free to be, or because they've been conditioned to equate service with purpose? When Winky, dismissed from Crouch's household and now working in the Hogwarts kitchen, weeps uncontrollably into butterbeer, she presents a tragic contrast to Dobby. Her sorrow is not just about losing her master, it's about losing her place in the world. "Winky is a good elf," she sobs. "Winky does what she is told." Her story challenges the very notion of freedom and makes Hermione's mission seem both noble and naive. By omitting the kitchen, the film also sidelines Winky entirely, a character who plays a subtle but significant role in the unfolding of the Triwizard Tournament's darker secrets. It is through Winky that we learn of Barty Crouch Jr.'s concealment and eventual escape, critical pieces in the puzzle leading to Voldemort's return. Without her, the intricate mechanics of Crouch's deception are reduced to vague exposition in the film, robbing the audience of the emotional weight that Winky's downfall brings. Her decline into despair and drinking is not merely a background tragedy, it's a mirror to the systemic neglect within the magical community. Moreover, the kitchen scene allows for one of the most humanizing moments between Harry and Dobby. In the book, when Harry gives Dobby a pair of socks for Christmas, it is not just a joke, it is a symbol of deep respect. Dobby, who treasures socks as a mark of freedom, is overwhelmed by this act of kindness. "Dobby has never been given a present before," he exclaims. The film reduces Dobby's reappearance to mere comic relief or background presence, losing the emotional thread that runs through his interactions with Harry. The house elf subplot also contributes to a broader commentary on labor and class within the wizarding world. The elves cook, clean, and repair the castle, yet their contributions are never publicly acknowledged. Students feast daily without questioning where their meals come from. This silent workforce is an invisible backbone, and the fact that only a few characters notice them reflects a societal blindness. The book encourages readers to recognize this blind spot, while the film's silence maintains it. There is a difference between a fantasy that is whimsical and one that has the courage to critique itself. Rowling's inclusion of the kitchen represents the latter. The warmth of the kitchen, its glowing hearths and hovering puddings, is more than just ambiance, it's the closest thing Hogwarts has to a family dining room. When Harry visits it, he sees elves bustling with a sense of belonging that contrasts sharply with his own childhood experiences. The kitchen becomes a surrogate home for him, a place where he is not a famous student or a chosen one, but simply someone being cared for. This emotional undercurrent enriches the scene, offering a rare moment of softness in a book marked by growing darkness. The absence of this setting in the film contributes to a broader flattening of the Hogwarts experience. The castle in the books is a living organism with secrets and systems and unseen labor. By stripping away the kitchen, the movie leaves us with a Hogwarts that is more ornamental than functional. It becomes a backdrop, not a world. And in fantasy, world building is not decoration, it is infrastructure. Every corridor, every character, every custom expands the viewer's sense of immersion. To lose the kitchen is to lose a vital room in the house that is Hogwarts. The erasure of the house elf narrative also affects how we perceive the characters who do care. Dumbledore, for example, is one of the few headmasters willing to employ free elves. His decision to hire Dobby is progressive and reflects a broader commitment to inclusion. But this aspect of his leadership is muted in the film. We see his wisdom, his power, his sorrow, but not his capacity for small, revolutionary kindness. In the book, Dobby tells Harry that Professor Dumbledore offered Dobby 10 galleons a week and weekends off. Such details paint Dumbledore as a man who sees injustice not just in the abstract but in the daily operations of his school. Even Ron, often criticized for his insensitivity, shows growth in these scenes. Initially dismissive of Hermione's activism, he gradually begins to listen if not always agree. The tension between them is real and it gives weight to their friendship. Without these debates, Ron becomes a flatter figure and the dynamics of the trio less textured. Hermione's frustration with his indifference is part of what makes their eventual bond so compelling. It is earned, not assumed. In addition, the inclusion of the kitchen and the elves complicates the binary of good versus evil. The wizarding world is not split cleanly between Death Eaters and Dumbledore's army. There are institutions of casual cruelty and deep-seated prejudice that exist within the very walls of Hogwarts. The kitchen reminds us that even the magical can be unjust. It asks readers to look beneath the surface, to question inherited systems, and to care about the overlooked. Most importantly, the Hogwarts kitchen embodies the idea that every part of a world matters. Fantasy thrives not only on battles and prophecy, but on bread and butter, on socks and soap, on those who sweep the floors and serve the feasts. By leaving this room unexplored, the film sacrifices depth for pace, but in doing so it closes a door that in the book leads not just to pudding, but to protest, to pain, and to purpose. Number 21, Professor Trelawney in the Shadows. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the flickering figure of Sybil Trelawney barely casts a shadow on the screen. Her presence in the film is trimmed down to the point of near erasure, a curious decision considering the subtle weight she carries in the fourth book. In the pages of Rowling's novel, Trelawney is more than just a mumbling oddity draped in shawls. She is a spectral observer of the castle's hidden rhythms, an oracle veiled in absurdity. Yet, the film adaptation sidelines her, stripping the story of a layer of eerie foreboding that pulses beneath the glittering Triwizard spectacle. Sybil Trelawney's reputation at Hogwarts is one of amused skepticism. Students roll their eyes at her dramatic flair, and even Professor McGonagall scoffs at her subject. But behind her haze of incense and teacups lies something else, a thread of real insight that slips through the cracks of her performance. In Goblet of Fire, Rowling gives the reader glimpses of this unacknowledged power, not through grand gestures or clear prophecy, but through fragmented utterances and unsettling moods that surround her. It's in these quiet tremors that her true purpose begins to stir. Her scenes are not simply comic relief, they hint at something darker looming in the folds of Hogwarts. Trelawney's behavior during the Triwizard Tournament is increasingly erratic, but disturbingly aligned with the story's larger arc. Early in the book, she mutters darkly in the Great Hall, mumbling about the coming darkness and death in the air. To the students, it is just another of her morbid performances. But to the reader who knows what is bubbling just beneath the surface, the return of Voldemort, these warnings echo with a different resonance. The film ignores these moments entirely, portraying her as a comical character with little to contribute to the serious themes unfolding. It is a lost opportunity to deepen the audience's sense of unease and foreshadow the coming storm. In the book, there is a particularly striking passage where Trelawney appears to be in a trance-like state during a meal, whispering incoherent predictions under her breath, her eyes glassy and unfocused. "The thing you dread will indeed come to pass," she says, unnoticed by most, and unremembered by those who do. These moments are scattered like puzzle pieces across the school year, too easily dismissed, yet the fact that she is nearly always alone, that her presence seems to fade into the background, makes these scenes even more chilling. It is as if the castle itself is tuning her like an instrument, pulling from her scattered psyche whispers of an approaching calamity. Perhaps the most important detail is how Trelawney reacts to the events surrounding Harry and the Triwizard Tournament. When Harry's name is unexpectedly drawn from the Goblet of Fire, Trelawney becomes increasingly distressed. In one scene, she nearly collides with him in the corridor and gasps, clutching her shawl and muttering that she sees a dark shadow around him. It is easy to laugh off, but in context, it is unmistakably a reference to the Death Eaters, to Voldemort's growing power, to the very real threat that Harry is about to face. The film, in its decision to cut these moments, robs the viewer of an atmospheric thread that connects Hogwarts to the realm of fate and mystery. Sybil's connection to the mystical world of prophecy is not just historical, it is active, bleeding into the present through her unconscious mind. In the earlier books, her significance was rooted in the past. She was the one who uttered the prophecy about Harry and Voldemort. But in Goblet of Fire, she becomes an instrument of foreshadowing again, even if she does not realize it. Her gift is not under her control, which makes her all the more tragic and eerie. Rowling uses this to her advantage, crafting moments where the absurd blurs into the prophetic, and the madwoman in the tower becomes a Cassandra figure, cursed to see the future but never be believed. There is a scene in the book where she gazes into her teacup, squinting through her spectacles, and gasps at what she claims is the mark of death. This could be a theatrical flourish, or it could be a true vision, misinterpreted by her conscious mind. That tension, that mystery, is what makes her character so quietly compelling. The film forgoes this ambiguity entirely, boxing her into a single note of comic relief. In doing so, it undermines one of the most subtly terrifying elements of the book, that the future is not just coming, it is already here, and only those half-mad or half-seeing can feel its tremors. What is most striking is that Trelawney never demands to be listened to. She does not shout her warnings, does not insist on her importance. She is a figure on the fringe, whispering into her sherry glass, while the main characters chase dragons and decipher clues, but her mutterings are like weather patterns, strange and shifting, difficult to interpret, but undeniably linked to something greater. Her absence in the film feels like the absence of a warning bell, muffled and ignored until it is too late. It is not just a character that is lost, it is a mood, a sense of encroaching fate that Rowling so carefully constructed. The omission of Trelawney's moments also affects the way the book's themes unfold. Goblet of Fire is about the gradual return of evil, about shadows gathering at the edges of the known world. Trelawney, with her trembling voice and distant eyes, is one of the few characters attuned to this shift. Her oddness makes her easy to dismiss, but that's what makes her warnings so powerful. The horror lies in the fact that she's right, and no one listens. She embodies the theme of overlooked truth, of knowledge hidden behind a veil of absurdity. Without her, the narrative loses a crucial thread of tragedy. When Cedric Diggory dies at the end of the book, it casts a retroactive chill over everything Trelawney said. Suddenly, her talk of death, of the servant returning to the master, of shadows and danger, becomes prophecy, not performance. The reader is left with the haunting realization that Trelawney saw this coming in her own way. The film, focused on visual spectacle, misses this entirely. Cedric's death feels sudden and shocking, but without the creeping dread that Trelawney's scenes plant along the way, it lacks the full weight of inevitability that the book achieves. Even Dumbledore, who hired her out of pity, recognizes by this point that her true talent lies buried under layers of theatrics. He tells Harry, in Order of the Phoenix, that Sybil has made 2 real predictions in her life. But in Goblet of Fire, there is a sense that her unconscious mind is trying to break through more often, that the veil is thinning as Voldemort gains strength. Rowling does not hammer this point home. She lets it simmer quietly. It is the reader's job to connect the dots, to feel the slow dread growing between the lines. The film misses this opportunity entirely, choosing to leave Trelawney silent. It is also significant that Trelawney's presence echoes the idea that magic is not always controllable or fully understood. Her predictions are not like spells. They do not follow rules, they are not reliable or repeatable, but they are real. Her visions seep through dreams, through dinner conversations, through accidental whispers. She is a living reminder that some knowledge is not meant to be explained, only respected. Her role, though small, reinforces the unknowable depth of the magical world. By excluding her, the film flattens that depth. In many ways, Trelawney is the embodiment of what makes Hogwarts feel like a place of mystery. She is part of the castle's pulse, its secrets, its whispered warnings. Without her, the school feels a bit more ordinary, a bit less enchanted. She does not just predict the future, she feels it, even when she cannot articulate it. That kind of emotional clairvoyance is rare in fiction, and Rowling uses it with quiet precision. Trelawney's dishevelled dignity, her isolation, her failure to be taken seriously, all add up to a portrait of someone who is not mad, but cursed, with a vision too clouded to be clear and too real to be dismissed. Rowling does not need to prove that Trelawney is always right. That's not the point. What matters is the atmosphere she creates, the sense that the veil between present and future is always just a breath away from tearing. Her scattered appearances are like cold gusts of wind that blow out candles before anyone notices. The film's polished structure has no room for such gusts. It prefers clarity over complexity, control over chaos. But in doing so, it loses the whisper of fate that Trelawney brings. The cost is subtle but significant, a magic less mysterious, a danger less forewarned, and a future that arrives without a whisper of warning. Number 22. Harry's Trauma. After the Graveyard. Harry was not the same boy who entered the Triwizard Tournament. After escaping the graveyard with Cedric's lifeless body, something inside him had changed forever. In the movie, he appears shaken, pale, and wide-eyed, but by the next scene, he's composed enough to accept Dumbledore's words and stand beside his friends. The emotional aftermath lasts only a few cinematic seconds, but in the book, J.K. Rowling paints a far more harrowing and raw portrait of a 15-year-old boy who had seen death, betrayal, and evil face to face. Harry is not simply disturbed, he is broken. He trembles uncontrollably when people touch him. He avoids eye contact. He lies awake at night, reliving the cold, echoing voice of Lord Voldemort and the moment Cedric Diggory fell dead beside him. When Harry returns to Hogwarts with Cedric's body, he doesn't speak. The weight of what he carries is unbearable. He clings to the portkey, unable to process the fact that Cedric, smiling and strong just minutes ago, is now sprawled lifeless beside him. The crowd cheers until they realize something is horribly wrong. Dumbledore reaches Harry first. In the book, Harry doesn't react to Dumbledore's voice. He doesn't respond to anyone. He holds onto Cedric's body until the last possible second, fingers clenched so tightly around the Triwizard Cup that his knuckles turn white. Rowling writes he did not let go of the cup even when Cedric's body was taken from him. That single detail, his refusal to release the one object tying him to the horror, shows how deeply in shock he truly is. Once in the hospital wing, Harry is surrounded by voices, but none of them reach him. Madame Pomfrey tries to feed him a potion he can barely drink. People speak at him, not to him as though he's a distant figure behind glass. All he can do is remember. He remembers Wormtail binding him to the gravestone. He remembers the slicing pain. He remembers Voldemort rising from the cauldron, red eyes glowing in the darkness. But most of all, he remembers the sound Cedric made as he fell. Not a scream, not a word, just the thud of a life cut short. No one in the film captures that quiet terror. No one shows the invisible wound he carries. What the movie glosses over is how the trauma continues to live inside Harry long after the graveyard. The days that follow are full of cold silences, haunted dreams, and uncontrollable guilt. He hears Fudge denying Voldemort's return and feels the fury rising in his chest, a fury the film never shows. Harry wants to scream at them all. He wants to shake them, force them to see what he has seen. In the book, he bites back his anger when Cornelius Fudge calls Cedric's death an accident. Rowling writes, Harry felt a white-hot anger rising in him. He wanted to hit something, to break something. That rage is essential. It marks the first time Harry realizes the world won't always believe him, even when he's right. It's the moment innocence begins to crumble. Even his friends, Ron and Hermione, don't fully understand. They try to be there for him, but Harry can feel the distance. He can't share what happened. Not really. The words would sound too hollow. Instead, he shuts down. The book describes nights where Harry lies awake, staring at the ceiling, Cedric's face hovering in his mind like a ghost. He replays the events over and over, What if he'd told Cedric not to take the cup? What if he'd been faster, stronger? There is a specific passage where Harry sits alone in the dormitory, his scar burning, his throat tight, feeling like a murderer. It was his fault. Cedric had been there only because Harry had told him to take the cup with him. That internal guilt, festering quietly, never makes it to the screen. Mrs. Diggory's sobs are another wound. When Amos Diggory arrives, wild with grief, his cries tear through the hospital wing. In the book, he collapses beside his son, clutching Cedric's body, wailing uncontrollably. And Harry stands there, frozen, listening. That sound, but a father's mourning, brands itself into his memory. It's one of the few moments where Harry is truly helpless. The ministry doesn't help him. The adults avoid looking him in the eye. Only Dumbledore seems to understand, and even he can't reach Harry in those early hours. The film condenses the emotion, sanitizes the pain. It removes the stillness of grief and replaces it with dialogue. But Harry, in truth, is silent. He doesn't want words. He wants the night to vanish. Rowling shows us the cost of death in a young hero's journey. Harry's hands tremble. He flinches at touch. He loses sleep. He avoids food. His body remembers the terror. That's the truth of trauma. It lives in the bones. It hides in quiet moments. It twists even joyful things into reminders of loss. When the feast is held to honor the champions, Harry can't eat. The hall is filled with golden decorations, yet Harry feels like he doesn't belong. Cedric's empty seat across the room is too loud to ignore. He felt as though he had been watching from a distance all year, as though he was only now waking up from a dream. That disassociation, that mental fog, is what real grief looks like. There's also the broken trust. The return of Voldemort is real. Harry has seen it, felt it, been marked by it. But the world doesn't want to listen. The denial from the ministry is a second betrayal, almost as cruel as Voldemort's resurrection. Harry realizes that telling the truth is not enough. He understands now that power will lie, that fear will silence people. In the film, this theme is reduced to a few exchanged glances, but in the book, Harry's disillusionment is sharp and painful. He begins to question everything. Adults were supposed to protect him, but they didn't, they couldn't. And some, like Fudge, won't even try. His guilt follows him home. When Harry boards the Hogwarts Express to return to Privet Drive, he feels hollow. Ron and Hermione try to cheer him, but he only nods. There's a line in the book where Harry stands at the train window, the countryside blurring past, and he thinks of Cedric. He would never forget Cedric. Never. That sentence lands with the weight of a promise, not just to remember, but to carry that memory into the fight ahead. It's a defining turning point. From now on, Harry isn't just a boy with a scar. He's a witness, a survivor. Even small scenes reveal how deeply scarred he is. When Dobby later wakes Harry from a nightmare, the elf finds him tangled in sheets, soaked in sweat, whispering Cedric's name. Harry doesn't tell anyone. He hides it like a wound that won't stop bleeding. And as the next book begins, his behavior has changed. He's more defensive, more skeptical. He's not as quick to trust authority. He begins to suspect the motives of those in power. The graveyard didn't just leave him shaken, and it taught him that darkness is everywhere, even behind familiar faces. The movie version of Goblet of Fire misses the emotional depth that defines this transformation. By skipping Harry's psychological journey, it skips his rite of passage. The Harry who faced Voldemort and returned is not the same boy who entered the maze. That version of Harry died alongside Cedric. What came back was someone older, lonelier, and forged in fear. Rowling doesn't let us forget this. She ensures that every moment of silence, every pang of guilt, every flicker of anger is carved into the pages. When Harry sees Cho Chang after Cedric's death, there is no joy. Only awkward silence. The girl who once made him blush now reminds him of a boy who never came back. That's how grief lingers. It alters relationships, rewrites memories. Cho is mourning too, and Harry, wrapped in his own guilt, doesn't know what to say. Their connection becomes a fragile bridge built on shared loss. The film, eager to continue the romance subplot, loses that nuance, but the book holds on to it tightly. The final scenes of the book are not triumphant. There's no grand music, no sense of victory. Dumbledore's words are heavy. Remember Cedric, remember what happened. And Harry does, every single night. That's the detail the movie trims, but the book refuses to ignore, the long, silent aftermath of death. Not the moment it happens, but the endless moments after, when life continues and the weight of loss settles into your soul, like stone. In the end, Harry doesn't cry in front of others. He doesn't make speeches or beg for sympathy. He carries the memory like a scar beneath the scar. Yet invisible but always there, the boy who lived now carries with him the boy who died. And in that he begins the quiet journey toward the man he is meant to become. Number 23. The Shadow of Voldemort in Everyday Life. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the book's pages are thick with unease, long before Voldemort physically returns. The story begins not at the Burrow, not on Privet Drive, but in a rotting manor where Tom Riddle once lived. Frank Bryce, a Muggle gardener, walks into a house he once cared for and dies for it. The scene is chilling and quiet. The snake-like face of Lord Voldemort appeared in the firelight, the book whispers to the reader, foreshadowing death. This is the very first chapter, a silent promise. Voldemort is coming. The film, however, brushes past this slowly tightening rope and instead chooses to present Voldemort as a final act surprise. The tone of the movie never quite captures the simmering dread that seeps through every chapter of the novel. It turns a haunting build-up into a jump scare. The book leaves breadcrumbs of Voldemort's presence in subtle, yet deliberate ways. Harry's dreams are the first harbinger. Night after night, he wakes up drenched in sweat, clutching his scar. These aren't just nightmares. They are windows. He saw a room, a man on the floor, and pain in his scar. Harry dreams of Nagini slithering through the shadows, of Wormtail whimpering, of a cold voice commanding murder. These visions link Harry directly to Voldemort, not just in prophecy, but in shared awareness. The movie truncates this bond. Harry's dreams are presented vaguely and their emotional toll is glossed over. The psychological link, the fact that Voldemort is bleeding into Harry's subconscious, is barely addressed. Barty Crouch's arc in the book is an intricate web woven with paranoia. The elder Crouch, a stiff, rule-bound man, begins to unravel before everyone's eyes. He speaks to people who aren't there. He vanishes for days. He sends letters in odd handwriting. At one point, he even stumbles out of the forbidden forest, wild-eyed and muttering to trees. "I need to warn Dumbledore. It's getting stronger," he says. The reader understands that something is deeply wrong, not just with Crouch, but with the very fabric of the magical world. Voldemort's influence is spreading, seeping into the Ministry through Polyjuice Potion and lies. The film, however, reduces Crouch to a stern official, barely showing his descent into madness, the eerie detail of his slow disintegration is lost. There's also Bertha Jorkins, a name mentioned often in the book, but omitted from the film. Bertha disappears early in the summer, and Dumbledore discusses it with sharp concern. She was a very capable witch, though not very bright, he admits, but there's something strange about her vanishing in Albania. The novel hints that Voldemort is collecting pieces, pulling strings. Bertha's murder, we later learn, provided him with crucial information and the magic needed to restore his body. This is part of Voldemort's quiet return, killing in the shadows, gathering strength. The movie ignores Bertha entirely, severing a critical thread that connects Voldemort's growing power to the rest of the world. The Quidditch World Cup is a spectacle, but in the book it also serves as a warning. When the Death Eaters storm the campgrounds, terrorizing Muggles and setting the Dark Mark into the sky, it's not just a random act, it's an echo. An echo of the First Wizarding War, a sign that those who once followed Voldemort still walk among them. "It was the Dark Mark, Harry," Hermione whispers. "You know whose sign." The fear that grips the crowd is not for what happened, but for what it means. Voldemort's ideology isn't dead. The movie reduces this to a brief moment of chaos. There is no exploration of what the mark means to wizards who lived through the war, no quiet scenes of people whispering about the return of a symbol they hoped never to see again. Even Rita Skeeter's sensationalism in the book is used to highlight the rising climate of fear. Her articles paint Harry as unhinged, Dumbledore as senile, and Hagrid as monstrous. But underneath the tabloid ink is a powerful message. The world is choosing ignorance. The ministry and the media are more interested in discrediting truth than confronting it. "The Prophet is trying to discredit him," Sirius tells Harry. "You're becoming too dangerous to them." Voldemort's greatest weapon is not just fear, it's doubt. By turning Harry into a joke and Dumbledore into a relic, the wizarding world is setting itself up for a fall. The film simplifies Rita into comic relief, missing the deeper impact of her lies. Throughout the book, Dumbledore is gathering his old allies. He sends messages to the giants, to the werewolves, to those in hiding. He suspects the truth. This quiet war council signals that the tides are turning. Voldemort's name is not yet spoken, but his shadow is long. "The world is changing, Harry," Dumbledore says. "The old alliances are being tested." This world-building is essential. It shows that Voldemort is not just a man in a graveyard, he is a storm gathering at the edges of every conversation. In the film, Dumbledore feels reactive rather than proactive. His urgency comes only after Voldemort's return, not before it. The reader is left wondering why he didn't act sooner, when in the book we see he always was. Winky, the house elf, is another piece of the puzzle. Her presence in the book is heartbreaking and revealing. She's loyal to the Crouch family, terrified of disobedience. When she is found with Harry's wand after the attack at the World Cup, the implications are staggering. Someone used her to frame Harry, to test a spell, and that someone we learn was Barty Crouch Jr., a Death Eater hiding in plain sight. Winky's story is not just about house elf rights, it's about how Voldemort's followers manipulate the powerless. The movie erases her entirely, removing another strand from the intricate tapestry of fear and control. Even the Triwizard Tournament itself carries the taint of Voldemort's manipulation. Each task is designed to isolate Harry, to test him, to push him closer to the final trap. In the book, there are layers of tension. The egg screams underwater, the mermaids speak in riddles, the maze pulses with dark energy. Harry begins to sense something is wrong, not just with the tasks, but with the tournament itself. "It's like it's all meant to lead me somewhere," he says. The film presents the tasks as thrilling spectacles, but the sense of being hunted, of being a pawn, is diluted. The moment when Harry touches the Triwizard Cup is meant to be a climax, not just in action, but in theme. In the book, the dread has built slowly, chapter by chapter. The maze, silent and wrong, whispers to the reader that this is not a test, it's a trap. When Harry and Cedric are pulled into the graveyard, it's the final note of a symphony of tension. The reveal of Voldemort's full return is not a shock, it's a confirmation. The shadow has finally taken form. In the film, however, this moment feels abrupt. Because Voldemort's influence hasn't been layered throughout the story, his appearance feels like a twist rather than a consequence. After Voldemort's rebirth, the book lingers on the aftermath. Harry is broken. He is shaking, grieving Cedric, unsure of his place in the world. The ministry doesn't believe him. The press mocks him. His scar burns worse than ever. "He's back," Harry insists, and no one listens. This isolation is central to the book's power. Voldemort doesn't need to win duels, he wins by convincing people he's not there. The film ends with a memorial scene, a vague speech, and then credits. The emotional fallout is barely explored. The world has changed, but the film returns to calm too quickly. What makes The Goblet of Fire so compelling as a novel is how it functions as a turning point. It is not just about dragons and ballrooms and mazes, it's about the slow return of darkness. The wizarding world begins to fracture, and the reader sees it happening in real time. The signs are there: disappearances, lies, denial, the weight of prophecy, the encroaching threat that grows like mold beneath the floorboards. Voldemort doesn't rise suddenly, he seeps in, he infects, he manipulates. By trimming these narrative threads, the film loses the slow build that gives Voldemort's return its power. It treats him like a monster in the closet, not a force changing the temperature of every room. In the book, readers walk through every whisper, every chill, every turned back. They feel the shadow long before it steps into the light. That's the difference between surprise and suspense, and that's the detail the film chose to erase. Number 24, the tragic story of the Crouch family. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, one of the darkest and most profound storylines was quietly erased in the film adaptation, leaving behind only shadows of what could have been a deeply tragic tale. The story of the Crouch family, central to the novel's exploration of justice, power, and failure, was reduced in the movie to a simple plot device. In the book, J.K. Rowling weaves a chilling drama that rivals classical tragedy, the rise and fall of Barty Crouch Sr., of the twisted transformation of Barty Crouch Jr., and the heartbreaking sacrifice of a dying mother. It is a story of ambition, deception, and irreversible loss, of a family consumed by its own secrets. Barty Crouch Sr. was once one of the most powerful men in the Ministry of Magic, heading the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. He was known for his ruthless pursuit of justice during the First Wizarding War, sending Death Eaters to Azkaban without trial. His moral rigidity was admired by some, feared by many. In his quest to preserve law and order, he allowed no exceptions, not even for his own son. When Barty Crouch Jr. was captured alongside a group of Death Eaters who had tortured the Longbottoms into insanity, Crouch Sr. immediately disowned him, refusing to believe in the boy's innocence. "He is no son of mine," he declared in the courtroom, as Rowling recounts through Dumbledore's Pensive. His face was cold, his verdict final. Yet that moment was not the end of the story. It was merely the beginning of the Crouches' descent into ruin. The mother, a frail woman dying of an unnamed illness, saw in her son something her husband no longer could: humanity. While Crouch Sr. maintained his image as a loyal servant of justice, she begged him in private to allow her to die in her son's place. In a decision shrouded in secrecy, he acquiesced. Using Polyjuice Potion and under the cover of night, they swapped places in Azkaban. Mrs. Crouch died there shortly afterward, buried under the name of her son, while Barty Jr. was smuggled back to the family home. To the world, he had been erased, but the dead do not rest peacefully when deception hides their truth. Barty Jr., now imprisoned in his own home under the Imperious Curse and the care of a devoted house elf named Winky, remained a ghost in the household, yet the control his father had over him began to wane. Winky, whose loyalty to the family was absolute, pleaded with her master not to attend the Quidditch World Cup, where the gathering of wizards posed too great a risk. Crouch Sr. relented, but that mistake proved fatal. During the chaos following the attack on the camp by Death Eaters, Barty Jr. escaped, freed from his father's spell. He would go on to commit unspeakable crimes, one of which was capturing Alastair Moody and impersonating him for nearly an entire school year. In the film, Barty Crouch Jr. is introduced as a sneering villain with a telltale tongue flick, already imprisoned and rapidly unveiled. The dramatic twist is simplified: a Polyjuice Potion, a stolen identity, a courtroom reveal. But in the book, the unraveling is slow and agonizing. Crouch Sr., increasingly unstable, begins to behave erratically. His obsession with control disintegrates as he realizes what he has unleashed. He disappears from the ministry without explanation, mutters in strange tongues, and eventually appears at Hogwarts in a deranged state, only to be silenced forever by his own son. There is a haunting scene in the book, one that the film entirely omits, where Crouch Sr. arrives at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. He is barely coherent, trying to find Dumbledore and desperately attempting to warn him. He is broken, disoriented, and frightened. "He's trying to fight him," says Harry to Crumb and Hagrid, sensing that something is wrong. But before he can explain, he vanishes, murdered by the very boy he had once condemned. The power and cruelty of that moment are not just in the act, but in the irony. The man who had spent his life capturing Death Eaters died at the hands of his own Death Eater son. The film never tells us about the prison exchange. It never shows the agonizing love of a mother who chooses to die for her son. It never shows the downfall of a man so consumed by his image that he sacrificed his family for power. Instead, the film offers a cleaner narrative, one devoid of emotional complexity, yet the book reminds us that even the strongest can fall, and even the most virtuous can betray their own hearts. Crouch Sr.'s story is not one of clear villains and heroes. It is about the cost of extremism. In his quest for order, he abandoned nuance and compassion. His belief in absolute justice blinded him to his own son's cries. Whether Barty Jr. was guilty at the time of his trial is left ambiguous. What matters is that his father's rejection and the cruel punishment that followed helped shape his transformation into a true monster. Rowling does not absolve him. She simply shows how evil can be born not only from ideology, but from the wounds of familial betrayal. When Dumbledore finally explains to Harry the truth behind the deception, he speaks with sadness, not rage. He describes how Winky had been dismissed for allowing her charge to escape, how the younger Crouch fell under the influence of Voldemort again, and how the father, in trying to hide the past, sealed his fate. Dumbledore calls the story a tragedy, and that word lingers. For in the end, Crouch Sr. lost everything: his wife, who gave her life for a lie, his son, who turned into a murderer under his own roof, his career tainted by secrets and scandal, and his life taken in a forest where no one heard his last words. This depth is what makes the Crouch storyline in the book so memorable. It is not simply about Death Eaters or deception. It is about the slow erosion of a man's soul, the failure of love, and the dangers of a system that values appearances over truth. The film gives us a quick twist. The book gives us a cautionary tale. Crouch Sr. was not an evil man, but he made evil choices, choices born of fear, pride, and a devotion to duty that ignored the cost at home. Even the house elf Winky carries the burden of this story, her grief and shame a constant presence. In the books, she becomes a symbol of misplaced loyalty. Her love for the family that destroyed itself is painful to read. "He was my master, my poor master," she sobs after learning what Barty Jr. has done. Her voice echoes the loss not just of individuals, but of ideals, of what happens when even the smallest are caught in the gears of ambition and secrecy. The absence of this subplot from the film robs viewers of understanding how closely the magical world mirrors the flaws of the real one. Families do fall apart under pressure. Parents do make terrible mistakes. Systems of power do fail to protect the innocent. And sometimes the monsters we chase are the ones we create ourselves. Rowling shows this with the Crouches, not through spectacle, but through sorrow. In the book, there is no satisfaction in Barty Jr.'s capture. He is kissed by a Dementor before he can testify, silenced before justice can be done. Crouch Sr.'s final acts remain hidden from the world. Dumbledore alone insists that truth matters more than perception, and yet, as the story moves forward, few remember the Crouches. They are a footnote in the larger war, their tales swallowed by darker battles to come. It is in these forgotten corners of the book that Rowling's true talent lies, not in grand gestures or magical duels, but in the quiet, crumbling edges of human nature. The Crouch family was not a central piece of the puzzle, but they reflected what the puzzle was really about, the consequences of our choices and the families we destroy in their name. In cutting this thread, the film lost more than a subplot. It lost a mirror. Number 25. Tensions with the Slytherins. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the moment Harry's name emerges from the goblet marks more than the beginning of a deadly tournament. It ignites a war of whispers and sneers across the Hogwarts corridors. The divide between the houses, especially between Gryffindor and Slytherin, becomes a chasm filled with mistrust, jealousy, and biting hostility. The film adaptation briefly nods to this with Malfoy's usual smugness, but it misses the storm of social rejection that Harry endures in the book. The pain isn't just in the tasks ahead, it's in the cold shoulders, in the backs turned on him by those he once considered friends, and in the vindictive creativity of his schoolmates. The books paint this picture with aching clarity. The film never lingers long enough to show us how deeply the rift cuts. Slytherin students become especially vicious, not with wands, but with a subtler weapon, public humiliation. In the book, they create buttons that flash between two messages. First, support Cedric Diggory, the real Hogwarts champion, glows proudly, then shifts to a cruel sneer. Potter stinks. These badges spread through the castle like wildfire, and while they claim to be in support of Cedric, they function as pointed daggers at Harry's reputation. The creators of the buttons remain unnamed, but their distribution among Slytherin students, particularly in the company of Draco Malfoy, Vincent Crabbe, and Gregory Goyle, makes their origin painfully clear. The film completely omits these buttons, removing a tangible symbol of the bullying Harry faces. This cruelty isn't limited to Slytherin. The book emphasizes how quickly Hogwarts turns its back on Harry. Even Hufflepuff, Cedric's house, views Harry as a glory-hungry liar. Ravenclaws whisper, Gryffindors falter. But it is Slytherin that leads the charge. Their disdain is more than rivalry. It's contempt fueled by a long-standing animosity between the houses. The book allows readers to feel that heat in every potions lesson, where Professor Snape, himself a former Slytherin, uses Harry's predicament as a pretext for humiliation. Fame clearly isn't everything, Snape sneers, referencing the badges. His bias bleeds into every interaction, strengthening the anti-Harry sentiment that simmers. Throughout the House of Serpents, the social atmosphere becomes stifling. In the Great Hall, Harry notices entire tables shifting as he enters. The Slytherin table, in particular, bursts into quiet snickers. Even during mealtimes, peace eludes him. Where once he could relax among familiar faces, now even the Gryffindor table feels uncertain. The film's lighter tone completely erases this, presenting Harry's journey as focused more on dragons and dances than on isolation and resilience. Yet it's this emotional landscape, this war of perception and popularity, that hardens Harry's spirit far more than the Triwizard tasks. The badge incident in the book serves as more than a prank. It is a symbol of how easily admiration can turn to resentment. Draco, with his habitual drawl, embodies the bitterness of Slytherin. Not only is he angry that a Gryffindor is once again in the spotlight, but he is emboldened by the fact that many students agree with him this time. Everyone thinks you put yourself in for it, Malfoy taunts. In the film, this line is delivered offhandedly, stripped of context. In the book, it's part of a wider campaign, a public relations attack against Harry, waged by his enemies and overlooked by the school's leadership. Slytherin's response is also important because it reflects a broader theme in the series, the complexity of social alliances in adolescence. Hogwarts is not a utopia. Loyalty is conditional, admiration is fickle, and students can be cruel when threatened. For Slytherin, Harry represents everything they dislike: fame without their definition of merit, defiance of rules, and a constant reminder of their own marginalization. The badges and gossip allow them to reclaim control, to shift the spotlight, even if briefly, onto Cedric and away from the boy they love to hate. This dynamic, so richly depicted in Rowling's text, is absent in the film, which instead prefers a more simplified depiction of school unity. The fact that even Ron, Harry's best friend, momentarily believes the rumors and turns on him adds to the emotional intensity of the divide. "Why didn't you tell me you were entering the tournament?" Ron demands. The silence that follows speaks volumes. Harry realizes that trust is easily fractured, even among those closest to him. Slytherins, seeing this crack, press harder. The schadenfreude is palpable in every corridor where Malfoy struts, his badge flashing its message for all to see. He no longer needs spells to hurt Harry. Public opinion is his most potent weapon. One of the most striking omissions from the film is how far the animosity spreads. In the book, even younger students mimic Slytherin's attitude. First years whisper behind hands, second years giggle as the buttons change messages. The castle becomes a pressure cooker of judgment. It's not just Malfoy's clique, it's the culture of the school itself turning temporarily against Harry. The absence of these scenes in the movie removes the sense of siege that defines this part of the novel. Without it, Harry's perseverance seems born of plot necessity, not personal growth under fire. The impact of this emotional warfare is significant. It forces Harry to mature. For the first time, he must rely not on widespread admiration, but on inner conviction. He continues preparing for the tasks not because others believe in him, but because he believes in himself. This arc of inner fortitude is powerful, especially for young readers grappling with peer rejection. It's not just about surviving dragons and mermaids, it's about surviving being misunderstood. The Slytherin contempt becomes the forge in which Harry's courage is tempered. Snape's complicity in the divide is another subtle but important layer. His favoritism towards Slytherins is well established, but in Goblet of Fire, he indulges their ridicule with a dangerous smugness. In one scene, Harry notes how Snape glances at the badges but says nothing. His silence is an approval. By allowing the climate of hostility to fester, Snape not only betrays his duty as a teacher, but actively enables a bullying culture. The film reduces Snape to cryptic lines and sweeping robes, but the book reveals his true influence in shaping the Slytherin-Gryffindor divide. What's most painful for Harry is that the Slytherins don't just mock him. They genuinely believe he cheated. Their scorn isn't performative. It's based on the conviction that he sought out danger and fame at the expense of house unity. This perception lingers. Even during the Yule Ball, the Slytherins can be seen clustered in corners, whispering, casting glances. Their disdain adds a layer of tension to an event already fraught with nerves. While the film captures the awkwardness of teen romance, it loses the simmering contempt that frames every social interaction for Harry. Cedric's role in this conflict is also more nuanced in the book. While he never openly mocks Harry, he benefits from the Slytherin support, a support rooted in opposition, not admiration. Cedric doesn't ask for the badges, but he also doesn't publicly denounce them. The Slytherins use him as a figurehead, a weapon of contrast. Their loyalty to him is conditional, strategic. The book hints at this quietly, especially when Cedric avoids confrontation, choosing diplomacy over justice. In the film, Cedric is noble and untouched by politics, but in the book, his silence contributes to Harry's isolation. By minimizing this Slytherin-led social siege, the film sacrifices one of the most realistic and painful aspects of adolescence, the weaponization of rumor and opinion. In Rowling's text, Hogwarts isn't just a school of spells, it's a crucible of character, where who you are is often judged not by your actions but by your narrative. The Slytherins master this narrative warfare in Goblet of Fire, and Harry is left to navigate the wreckage. He does so with grit but not without scars. The film, in chasing spectacle, misses this quieter, crueler truth. Even Hermione, always rational and loyal, is shaken by the hostility. She tries to support Harry, but the weight of the school's opinion makes her cautious. She urges Harry not to retaliate, not to give Slytherin more fuel. This shows how effective the campaign is. Even the wisest students fear its consequences. Slytherin's unity becomes its strength, and though they fail to bring Harry down, they succeed in making him feel alone. The lasting legacy of this conflict is not in the tasks of the tournament, but in the emotional resilience Harry develops. He learns to trust fewer people, but to trust them more deeply. He learns that not everyone who smiles is a friend, and not every crowd is an audience worth pleasing. The Slytherin-hosted hostility, vividly painted in Rowling's prose and erased in the film's fast-paced structure, is more than teenage drama. It is a fundamental moment of transformation. Through rejection, Harry becomes not just braver, but wiser. Through isolation, he discovers the strength to walk alone when necessary. Number 26. Secret Surveillance of the Champions. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the air at Hogwarts becomes thick with suspicion long before the first task of the Triwizard Tournament begins. As the pages unfold, an almost imperceptible tension begins to wrap itself around Harry, a feeling that someone, or several someones, are watching him closely. This atmosphere of paranoia, so masterfully built by J.K., Rowling in the book becomes a subtle but vital engine of suspense. Yet when the story was translated onto the screen, this engine was left largely untouched, its components disassembled or ignored. The result is a film that moves from one set piece to another, but loses the creeping dread that made the book so singularly powerful. Nowhere is this loss more evident than in the removed storyline of Harry being secretly monitored, not only by enemies, but by supposed allies. The book captures an unsettling reality. Harry's every move is under scrutiny. Professor Snape, always suspicious of Harry, takes his watchfulness to another level. When Harry returns late one night from a meeting with Sirius in the Gryffindor common room fireplace, Snape is waiting for him, as though expecting him. "You're out of bed after hours, Potter," Snape snarls, his voice like a whip in the darkness. But it is not just rule-breaking Snape seems interested in. He watches Harry with a knowing, almost calculating look, as if searching for signs of hidden knowledge or secret intentions. He doesn't merely punish, he probes. Igor Karkaroff, the headmaster of Durmstrang, is no less interested in Harry. While he shows disdain for the fact that Harry's name emerged from the Goblet of Fire, he also lurks in the shadows more often than not, his pale face occasionally seen disappearing around corners or glancing sideways at Harry in the Great Hall. There is something sinister in his quiet. Unlike the film, where Karkaroff's suspicion seems momentary and loud, in the book he is a constant background force, a cold breath on the back of Harry's neck. He appears too often in places he has no business being. His presence is not theatrical, but strategic. One particularly haunting moment in the book involves Harry noticing shadows moving near the restricted section of the library. He doesn't know who it is, only that someone is often there late at night, someone who does not wish to be seen. These moments are brief, even vague, but that is precisely what makes them effective. The unknown figures do not speak, they do not attack, they simply exist, partially seen, lingering just outside the reach of explanation. In these sequences, Rowling constructs not just tension, but the architecture of dread. Meanwhile, Harry becomes increasingly paranoid. His every late-night walk, every conversation in private, feels tainted by unseen ears and eyes. The magical world, once full of wonder, starts to feel more like a trap. He had the uncomfortable feeling that he was being watched, the book says plainly, but its implications are not simple. Who is watching him? Why? And more importantly, what do they want? This is not the sort of suspense that comes with dragons or mermaids. This is the slow-building, suffocating fear of the hunted. Adding to this climate is the mysterious activity of Barty Crouch Sr., whose bizarre behavior only fuels the sense that something is deeply wrong. When Harry finds him talking to trees in the Forbidden Forest, it is a moment soaked in unease. There is no explanation, no context, just a madman in the woods mumbling to himself, drenched in something that feels like foreboding. The scene adds a layer of psychological horror, suggesting that behind the pageantry of the tournament, something is unraveling, something dark and hidden. In the film, Crouch is a distant bureaucrat with little screen time. In the book, he is a living omen. The growing sense of surveillance is never limited to just adults. Even students start acting strangely. Harry catches glimpses of strange expressions, Fleur Delacour glancing at him with narrowed eyes, as if reassessing him, Cedric Diggory asking odd questions that seem rehearsed. Even Ron, in his worst moments, accuses Harry of seeking attention, echoing the suspicion that has crept into the school like a fog. The tension becomes so thick that even friendships tremble under its weight. This is where the book excels, by showing how fear and mistrust infect even the closest of bonds. The film, in its rush toward the major plot points, the tasks, the Yule Ball, Voldemort's return, neglects this slow poisoning of the atmosphere. The shadows in the hallway become just shadows. Snape becomes comic relief. Karkaroff fades into insignificance. The film presents a school full of activity, but not a school under surveillance. And that distinction matters, because in the book, the real enemy isn't just Voldemort, it is secrecy itself. When Moody, actually Barty Crouch Jr., in disguise, is revealed as the orchestrator behind Harry's participation in the tournament, the book's paranoia finds its brutal confirmation. The man who helped Harry, advised him, saved him, was the enemy all along, and the signs were there if only someone had looked closer. "I've been watching you all year," the impostor says. And suddenly, all those glances, all that tension comes into focus. The surveillance wasn't imagined. It was real, constant, and orchestrated with terrifying precision. Even the pensive scene, where Harry glimpses the trial of the younger Barty Crouch, is laced with suspicion. Dumbledore's expression is unreadable, his comments careful. Everyone seems to be holding something back, and Harry is left to piece together a puzzle no one wants him to solve. That kind of storytelling, where knowledge is dangerous and ignorance even more so, depends on the slow drip of clues, not the explosion of spectacle. The restricted section itself becomes a symbol. In the earlier books, it was a place of forbidden knowledge, a source of mischief. In Goblet of Fire, it transforms into something darker. The fact that people are seen sneaking into it is no longer mischievous, it is threatening. Knowledge is not just power, it is a weapon, and someone is collecting it. These small, unsettling moments are what make the mystery of the Triwizard Tournament compelling. Who is orchestrating what? Who benefits from Harry's pain? Who knows the truth and refuses to speak? None of this subtle unease is truly present in the film. The camera does not linger in dark corridors. The whispers behind closed doors are silenced. Snape's suspicion is used for laughs, not discomfort. The corridors of Hogwarts, which should be filled with secrets and danger, become instead a background for fireworks and dancing. The viewers never get the sense that the walls themselves are watching. One of the most important quotes in the book comes when Harry reflects on this very feeling. It was almost as though the school itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen to him next. That sentence encapsulates the true tone of the book, a school no longer a haven, but a stage for something terrible and unseen. It's not just about dragons and mazes, it's about dread. And dread is a quiet thing. In cutting these details, the film loses the essence of what Goblet of Fire truly is, a magical thriller cloaked in the guise of a school competition. What remains is the skeleton of a great story, but not its heartbeat. Without the tension of constant surveillance, Harry's journey feels less perilous, his victories less earned. The film may show the Triwizard Tournament, but it forgets the conspiracy that gave it teeth. Ultimately, It is this atmosphere, the watching eyes, the creeping footsteps, the hushed conversations, that made the book unforgettable. The story is not just about who wins the cup. It is about who is pulling the strings and how far they're willing to go to stay hidden. When that thread is pulled, the entire illusion of safety begins to unravel. And in that unraveling, Rowling gives us not just magic, but fear. The kind of fear that makes you look over your shoulder and wonder who might be watching from the shadows.